If you keep saying, I want to start a business, but genuinely don't know what business to start, I want you to do something slightly strange after this video. Open your CV, because I think some of you have spent 10 or 15 years developing skills some people would happily pay for. But because those skills feel normal to you, you don't see them as a business. It's sitting right in front of you. Today, I'm gonna walk you through the exact exercise I'd use to find business ideas from your existing career, experience, and network. So by the end, I don't want you to have one perfect idea. I want you to have 3 opportunities worth investigating. First thing we're going to do is a career inventory. And I don't mean just writing down your job titles. No, I want you to go a little bit deeper. Okay, so think about every single role you've had over the last 5, 10, 15 years of your life. Okay, what did you actually do in those jobs? What did you do? You know, what problems were you responsible for solving? Okay, think about it. What did your colleagues constantly ask you for help with? Right? It may not have been related to your job. They could be asking you something else. What were you better than the average person on your team? What did clients or customers appreciate about you? What process did you understand well? What did you have to learn the hard way? Okay. What could you do now in 30 minutes that it will take a beginner 3 hours? Write all of it down. These are your skills. And don't dismiss things because they feel basic. Okay. That's one of the biggest mistakes that experienced professionals make all the time, and I see all day, every day. Something feels easy to you because you've done it 500 times. That doesn't mean it's easy. It means you're very good at it. You've become very good at it. Let's say you've worked in HR for 10 years of your life, okay? So you might write down something like this. Recruitment, you've done interviewing, you've interviewed a few people, you've done onboarding, employment, processes, you're very good at the process of employing somebody. Staff retention, you know the best practice for staff retention. Managing difficult conversations, okay? Writing job descriptions, this is something that you can do and do quite well. Building teams, you're good at this. Performance management, tracking how people are getting on, are they making progress, are they not? Training managers. Now, suddenly we don't have just someone that works in HR, do we? We've got somebody with a collection of commercially useful skills. Maybe you spent 10 years working in beauty, for example, in the beauty industry, and you might understand that customer retention is paramount to a successful beauty business. Bookings and how the bookings work, no-shows and how to manage no-shows, staff rotas and how to manage that, treatments and what treatments are good for different types of people, upselling, how to upsell your services, stock and inventory management, okay, customer experience, you know, focusing on the experience that you're providing, local marketing. Start looking at yourself through problems you know how to solve. The second thing I want you to do is to stop looking for revolutionary business ideas. You don't need to do that, okay? You do not need to invent Uber. You do not need to create the next Amazon. You don't need a business nobody has ever thought of before. In fact, for a first-time entrepreneur, I often find it reassuring when there are already people paying for that thing that you're considering. Competition can be evidence of demand. The question becomes, can you serve a particular customer better? Can you make the experience easier? Can you specialize, for example? Can you communicate the value more clearly? Can you provide a better service? Can you solve a slightly different version of the problem? That's entrepreneurship too. So now we're going to do what I call a career audit, okay? So take everything you wrote down and divide it into 3 columns, okay? Column 1 is going to be your skills, okay? So write down your skills. What can you actually do, okay? And don't be humble here. Write down what you can do. Column 2 is going to be problems, okay? So what problems have you repeatedly seen in your industry, your career, and in your life, okay? And then column 3 is going to be people, okay? And what I want you to do here is, who do you understand, okay? Who do you already have access to, okay? Who would trust your experience? Who have you spent years working around? And then I want you to look for the overlap between these things, between your skill, between the problem, okay, between the person. That's where interesting business ideas often appear. Let's use the HR example again, right? Okay, so the skill in HR is recruitment. This is the skill that you've acquired over the years. The problem, okay, is small companies struggle to hire good people. Yeah. Now, the people who are involved in this problem are founders and small businesses. Now, the potential business from this, putting this all together, is a specialist recruitment company. Okay. Another one would be skill, could be onboarding and HR processes. Okay. The problem in that could be small businesses are hiring their first employees and have no proper systems. Now the people involved in that problem are growing companies. Companies that have started up, but they're starting to grow now. Okay, so the potential business is outsourced HR operations. Okay, another skill is interviewing. So say that you're in HR and you're really good at interviewing people. So the problem is candidates struggle with interviews. That's a problem there because some people do struggle when they go to interviews. Now, people are professionals trying to progress in their careers. These are people that you're helping. Now, the potential business for this is interview preparation. You can create a whole business around interview preparation. Do you see what's happening here? We haven't searched 100 businesses to start in 2026. We haven't done that. Okay, we're extracting opportunities from things you already understand. Now, I want you to score those ideas, okay? Because having 20 ideas isn't necessarily helpful either, okay? You need to, for each potential business, ask yourself 5 questions, okay? So, number 1 question is, do I actually understand this problem? Do I understand this problem really, really well? The second question you should ask yourself is, can I identify the customer? Okay. Third question you should ask yourself is, can I reach that customer? How do I actually reach that customer? Okay. And another question you should ask yourself, number 4, are people already spending money trying to solve this problem? Number 5 is, can I test this idea without taking an enormous financial risk? And give each one a score. Okay. You're not trying to scientifically predict the future here. What you're doing is that you're simply forcing yourself to think commercially rather than emotionally. Because sometimes the business idea you're most excited about has absolutely no obvious route to customers. And the slightly less glamorous idea has customers everywhere around you. So pay attention to that. And please don't marry the idea. This is another thing, okay, that slows people down. They say, this is my business, before a single customer has bought anything from them. Now, every piece of feedback feels personal. If somebody doesn't like the offer or they feel rejected, you know, if the market wants something slightly different, then they resist changing it. Don't do that, okay? This is business. Feedback is not failure. At this stage, you're just investigating your idea. You're saying, okay, I think this might be a good business opportunity. Okay, so let me find out. Let me find out if people actually want what I want to give to them. That's a much healthier way to approach it. Your first idea is a hypothesis, right? It's an idea. The market gives you the information, right? How they respond to what you're putting out there. And then you adjust it. The next step is customer conversations. This is where the idea starts leaving your notebook and entering into the real world. Okay, find people who could potentially be the customer. Find those people, okay? Not your friends who love everything you do, not your mom, okay? You need to find an actual customer and don't immediately pitch them. Never do that, okay? Ask questions. You need to understand your customer pain point. How are you currently dealing with this problem? What's difficult about this problem, okay? What have you tried previously? It's so good for you to know. What have they tried previously? What does it cost you? Okay. What would an ideal solution look like to you? What would stop you from paying people for help? Okay. So now you're listening for patterns. You're trying to find out, what are people saying? If 10 people describe the same type of frustration, then pay attention to this. If nobody cares about the problem you thought was enormous, then pay attention to that as well. Both outcomes are useful. Then test small. You don't need to build the final version of your company. You need enough of an offer to see whether somebody will actually exchange money for the result. And that could mean starting with a service, a consultation, okay? A small package, a pilot. Just start small, just to test it. A limited number of clients. Whatever makes sense for the business, then do it to test it, okay? But the goal is to get out of theory mode, because the moment somebody considers paying you, you start learning things that no brainstorming session can actually teach you. They ask questions that you don't expect. That's great. They object to things that you thought were obvious. This is great feedback. This is great data for you. They care about things that you barely mentioned. This is also great. That is where your business starts getting sharper. You start refining your business now. Let me give you another example. Imagine you've worked in insurance for 10 years. Let's say that's been your career, okay? You understand the products within insurance, okay? You understand customer objections. You understand why customers don't buy. You understand how people buy. You understand what triggers them to buy. You understand the claims journey. If there's a claim, what happens up until money's paid. You understand where customers get confused along that journey, okay? That knowledge could potentially lead to several businesses. Maybe there's an opportunity around education around this. Maybe recruitment around this. Maybe lead generation around this. Maybe services for insurance companies, potentially. Maybe technology that needs to be implemented to make these processes faster. Maybe brokerage, depending on the licensing and regulation. The point isn't that one of those is definitely the answer. The point is that I've worked in insurance for 10 years is not a dead end. Absolutely not. It's the beginning of an investigation. And obviously, if you're operating in a regulated industry, make sure you understand exactly what you're legally allowed to provide. Make sure you understand all the red tape of your industry. Experience does not replace licensing and regulation and all of that. And you know that better than anybody else. Now, here's the part I really want you to remember. You don't have to choose the business you're going to run for the rest of your life. You need to choose an opportunity worth testing. That's all it is. Just start with that. Because your first business will teach you things about yourself as well. It's all learning. You're going to learn yourself. Maybe you discover that you hate delivering one-to-one services. Maybe you realize that you love the sales element of your business. Maybe you love the operation and the delivery. Maybe you realize that you actually do want a team behind you. Maybe you discover that you prefer doing business to business as opposed to business to consumers. Maybe the original offer leads you to a much better one in 6 months' time. You're going to learn a lot about yourself. You cannot think that your way into all of those answers is some answers only appear once you start. So if you've been stuck for months saying, I just need the perfect idea, I just need the perfect plan, I want you to replace that question, okay? Replace that mindset and don't ask, what is a perfect business for me? No, that is a redundant question. Ask yourself instead, what are 3 business opportunities that my current skills, experience, access gives me the right to investigate? That is a much easier question. Then choose one. That's it. Speak to the customers, test the idea, learn as you're going along the process and move forward. So tonight, what I want you to do is open up your CV and stop reading it as a job seeker and read it as an entrepreneur, okay? And I want you to think about, where have you been creating value all your life? What problems do you understand really well? Who do you understand? Because you do understand people. What people already trust you? What do people already trust you to do? Your business might already be in your CV.